Hello, everybody. No, I really ought to change that music so it does a nice fade out rather than just disappearing. But yeah, we'll get there eventually for that kind of thing. Anyway, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me. I actually have energy and I kind of hope I have a working machine sitting next to me. After last week, it decided to go totally wrong at the last minute. We'll see what happens today. I've just opened Visual Studio and it went boom on me. So, fingers crossed that that still works. So, yeah, what happened with the machine last week? Well, I needed a new motherboard, which is interesting because the machine's not that old, but it was delivered without the heatsink for the SSD. Contact the company. They were really fantastic with it. We're going to see if we can get you a replacement heatsink. They couldn't do that. So then I had a choice of a discount or taking a new motherboard. So I took the new motherboard. I upgraded it at the same time because it was only a few euros extra to get the latest version. And last week I spent a few hours dismantling it. The Cooler Master Cube case, by the way, is awesome for that kind of thing. It's really easy to dismantle and put back together. Used it in a test bench setup. So because the case is flat pack, you can literally take off all of the panels and I just had the motherboard sitting there open. Change the motherboard, really easy to do. Replace the thermal paste because I think there was an issue with the previous thermal paste on it. I don't think it was working well. Put it all back together, cross my fingers, and it all worked. It was fantastic. So I had it plugged into the TV. I had a keyboard and mouse plugged in on the table. And I ran Cinebench and got way better scores than I did on the old motherboard, running about 10, 15 degrees cooler at the same time. Left it running for a couple of hours just to make sure there's no glitches. Everything was fine. So then I put the panels back on the case and it would not post. Absolutely not. No way at all. Checked all the connections, checked I hadn't knocked any, the memory, the graphics card, reseat all these things, try everything. No, it would not post and I was getting a GPU error on the motherboard. I ran of energy, so I stopped. I do that sometimes, occasionally. And it's like, okay, it's got to leave the living room because, we need to eat. Brought it back upstairs, plugged it into my monitors upstairs, working computer. I actually don't like that. It's kind of cool that it's working. I'm not upset about that. But why did it start working? Why did it stop working? But then why did it start working again? That's the bit that always scares me. I prefer it if I actually fix something and something comes back to life than, not fixing something and it still comes back to life somehow. So is it going to break again in the future? Who knows? I will say that in the week since I've done that, I've used it for some things. For programming, for checking emails, for writing documents. Played a lot of Horizon Zero Dawn. Absolutely loving that game. Played a lot of Cyberpunk. Tried The Last of Us Part 1. Hasn't skipped a beat, so let's see whether or not it survives today. So don't know how long the stream's going to be today. I have one thing in mind that I want to do, and hopefully my energy level is going to stay there until that's done. So let's get onto that, shall we? Let's see if I can find the right switch to show my desktop. Not that. That would be my new camera that I'm going to be using for Lego building when I get back into it. Let's try that one, shall we? Hey, that looks better. That looks like Visual Studio. So what I want to try and do today is something that we've been looking at in the office. For those that don't know, I'm Tech Explorer DevOps for Omniplan, financial software software company based in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And I've got to say thank you very much to my boss for sponsoring the StreamYard account so that I can do these streams. But one thing that we've been talking about is, do we want to try making an app? We have a web application. Should we also have an app? I was like, well, if we're going to make an app, do we want to make just a mobile-first web application that caters to the new audience that we're going after? Or should we make an application that people can install? Problem with a web application, we'd make it a progressive web app, but with Apple's changes in policy, you can't do that anymore. You can't install it to the desktop, yeah, on your phone. I was like, what do we want to do? I was like, why not both? If we're going to be using MAUI, we're going to be using Blazor, then why not write the application in such a way that we can use both and let users decide which one they want without that much extra effort for ourselves? So that's what we're going to be playing at today. I've got like a vague idea what I want to do. This is absolute. Let's see whether or not I can remember how to do this live with no notes, which is fun because normally when I'm giving a talk, I make sure I have notes to make sure everything's working. But I'm not going to do that today. We're going to wing it and see what happens. First thing that we want to do is we are going to make a Blazor WebAssembly application. Could do this with a Blazor web app, but I want to try the WebAssembly one. Then we are going to make an API for that. I don't know whether or not to do an Azure function or just a standard minimal web API. I might go for the Azure function. And all that we're going to do for today is just get the weather service that you get out of the box with both the Blowy, new name for Blazor MAUI, Blowy. So we're going to see whether or not we can get the standard templates that you get with MAUI and with Blazor, so that would be the counter and the weather page, to work inside of one app. I want to see how much work this is. It's not something I've played with that much. So let's see how we get on with that. So to start, we are going to, yeah, that's really interesting. I'm looking at the size of the cursor on my preview, and it's like 1/10 of the size of the cursor on my page. I have a massive cursor because I lose it constantly. And it would appear that when you share your screen, it only shares a position of the cursor. It doesn't share the size of it. So what you're seeing is minuscule compared to what I'm seeing on my page. So let's add a new project. And we're going to start with the Blazor WebAssembly standalone app. So let's run that up, and we're going to call this Blazor test.client because naming's hard. And we're going to put that in just a temp directory. This isn't code I'm going to be keeping probably. It's just something to play around with. So let's run that. We want the .NET long-term support, HTTPS. We want the sample web pages because they're the ones that we're going to be using. And let's spin that one up. So let's build that to get all the packages. For those that have never seen a Blazor WebAssembly app before, let's just go on a really quick tour. We have the pages that have just been scaffolding, those example pages that we said we wanted in the project creation. We have the counter.razor, really simple page. We say where we want to go to with this app page directive. We have the counter title on the tab. We have a H1 for the counter, and then we just have a current count, which starts at 0, and then a button that just increases it. So just to show you that Blazor can do interactive stuff. We have our home page, which is nothing. And then we have our weather.razor app, and this is one where we are getting sample data from this www sample data folder and loaded it in. And this is what we're going to be changing. We're just going to move this sample weather data into some kind of API just to show that we can get some communication working. Let's close all of those off. Hey, GitHub Copilot's enabled. How wonderful. So that's kind of like the main thing. We have this underscore imports. Love this file. Absolutely love this file. It makes your components so clean. Any using statements that you are using all over the place, you can put in here, and you don't have to add it each individual time. You can keep your components in your pages really clean, kind of like the global usings in C#. This came first. Then we have our app.razor, which gives us our router. So that's how we do all the routing in Blazor. And then we have our program. So just make a new WebAssembly. We have a HTTP client built in, which goes to the host environment base address. This is something that I'm going to be changing just to point to whatever URL we're using when we run this in, let's say, either Web API or Azure Function. Not decided yet. Probably a function just because I do those all the time. And if we run this, and then we wait and we see which page it opens up on, and obviously it's the wrong page, we have our Hello World app. So I don't particularly want that full screen. Where we have our counter and we have our weather, which we're getting from that data. Okay. So that's the first one. That's our Blazor test client. Now we want to add a new project again. And for that one, I want a .NET MAUI Blazor hybrid app. So let's put that one in there. And we're going to call this Blazor. If I can type test.maui. I hate all caps. Let's create that one. I'm only going to be concerned about running our .NET MAUI on Windows for now. It's obviously you can run it on whatever platform. That's what it's designed for. But we're just going to keep on looking at it on the Windows machine today. So let's start that one up. We'll have a look through the application in a second, but let's just start it up and we'll see it's exactly the same. Yeah. I haven't set this machine up for doing MAUI applications. Well, that was a bit daft, wasn't it? Let's try looking at my settings. If you don't mind, I'm just going to do this off screen. Developer. Let's turn on developer mode. Yes. Fine. Shall we try that one again? Well, that looks better, doesn't it? Still opened on the wrong screen, but hey, at least it's working. So you can see that this looks pretty much exactly the same as we just had for our Blazor WebAssembly application. We have the home, we have a counter, and we have a weather component. So that's kind of doing all the same thing as we had previously. Only now it's running inside a MAUI application. What's interesting here is this isn't just showing the HTML inside a web view inside of a MAUI application. It's compiling our Blazor templates to be used inside of the MAUI application. Awesome, because we can share a lot of stuff. You have great control over how your app looks because you do have all the CSS control that you have inside of Blazor. Something to be aware of, if you're going to do this, you lose access to native controls. So if you use a standard XAML MAUI application, then if you say, give me a tab group, on Windows, you'll get a Windows tab. On Android, you'll get an Android tab. On Apple, you'll get an iOS tab. So you always get that native look and feel to your application. Don't get that with this. Whatever you said is your HTML is how it's going to look on each device. So let's stop that one and take a look here. And we have a components folder. And here we have our pages. So we have our counter.razor, home.razor, weather.razor, our imports again. And this root is pretty much the same as we had in the app.razor. It's a little bit different, but close enough for what we're going to be doing today. So with all of these similarities, it seems a shame that we are copying this home, counter, and weather between the two. So let's see what we can do about that. That's the first one that I want to do. I want to try and split a few pages off. First up, I want to split off the home page so that we can use that from either direction. Then I want to split off the counter. And then we're going to take a look at the weather, because that one actually is where things start to get interesting because of how they fetch the data in each place. So in order to do that, we're going to need a class library. So we want a new project, and it's got to be a Razor class library. And we're going to call that Blazor test dot shared, if I can spell, because spelling is hard. Let's create that up. In here we have another imports.razor, really useful. We're going to be using that in a second. And we have a test component and a test JavaScript interrupt. We're not going to be using either of those, so let's delete them. Inside of here, we're going to add a folder for pages, and we're going to start with the Blazor test. So what I want to do is drag this home.razor and move it to pages. The reason why I want to do this one first is because it's absolutely the simplest one to do. So let's remove our home.razor. Okay. So now if we try and spin this up, not if I try and spin up the MAUI app, because we're not touching that. If I try and spin this up, come on. Yeah, fine. I don't need the Android SDK for this. Okay, that's really interesting. That shouldn't work because I don't have a home. Shall we clean this and try again? There we go. Sorry, there's nothing at this address. That's what I wanted to see, that we don't have that home file anymore. So that's now available in Blazor test.shared. So what we're going to do is add the reference to that. But once we do this, we now have to make this available inside of our app. And if I remember correctly, this is where it's going to get interesting because I have no notes. What we need to do is add inside of our app.razor, we need to say additional assemblies equals at and then we need to add the assembly name. So that is going to be, what we're going to do is this imports.razor. So we're going to do Blazor test dot I will spell that correctly at some point in history, who knows. Dot shared dot underscore import, and that should be a type of dot assembly. And obviously I've done something wrong because it doesn't like this at all. It's thinking. It's thinking a lot. Okay. It's failed. Why are we failing? Because I've missed out a humongous amount of stuff. Why did I put that there? That should be there. The fact that it is not showing me the correct markup here scares me. This isn't going to work. This is going to work. It's just that Visual Studio is running a bit behind the times. So we now have our home file inside of this shed. So next step is let's do the same for our MAUI application. So what I want to do is come into Components and Pages and delete home.razor. And you're going to see that this is so similar that I'm going to copy paste this. Because you know what? It saves typing at a second time. We need to add our project reference again. So we want blazor.shared. And then in our, I can never remember which one it is, main page.xaml, roots.razor. That would be the one. So in theory, this should build because it's exactly the same syntax. Wow, it's taking a long time to think about that. It's actually keeping the CPU quite busy too. I can suddenly hear the fan spinning up next to me. So let's go to MAUI and see whether or not this one now works. Or whether or not I'm going to have to headbutt the wall for a while. And it's opened on a different screen. Seriously, using multiple screens is just so much fun. So there we go. We now have our hello world inside of this shared component. Now, this hello world always says the same thing. So let's just change this to be Stacy Clouds Stream. And check that that changes. And if it doesn't, then I'm really going to scream because I've got no idea what that would be. And there we go. So we have control over that. And now it doesn't matter which app we start. We should get the same information. Yes. So we shared our first component. And in this way, I'm not going to start it up because I don't have an Android client installed on this machine yet. That was maybe a little bit short-sighted of me. But now we can deploy the same app to all of the different environments that MAUI supports. I'm not using any device-specific APIs here. I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. So the next one that I said I wanted to do was this counter page. So let's move the counter and let's delete it from here. And let's delete it from here. And then if we go into counter.razor, shared count, just so that we know it's coming from the right place. And again, we're going to rebuild. We're going to hope for the best. Go to the counter page. And we're getting the old one. Probably have to clean the solution again. Now we have to wait for it to build again. Wow. And it's still only saying, oh, I'm an idiot. Shared counter. I put it in the wrong place. Let's just run that one up, shall we? Now we have our shared counter, so we know we're coming from the right place. And again, we want to run that inside of MAUI on our Windows machine. Gotta say, so far, this is going better than I was expecting it to. So we have our Stacy Cloud stream, and if we go to counter, we have our shared counter, and it's still working. Now we've got to do the more interesting one. We've got to get our Azure function working. Now, I'm not going to focus too hard on the function here because that's kind of the least of my concerns. I just want to get something simple going so that I can connect the two together. So what are we going to need for that? I want to share my library between the client and, between the API and the consuming client. So I want to run that one in its own project. So let's add a new project. And here we just want a library, class library, and Blazor test dot models. That works as well as anything else. Let's get rid of that class one. And what I want to do here is add weather. Get rid of all of this except for the namespace. But what we are going to do is turn that into a file scope namespace. And I'm going to come to this weather JSON. I'm going to pick one of these. And I'm going to paste that as a class. This needs to be public because we have to, not partial, because we have to use this in multiple places. And you know what? This never needs to change. So I actually want this as a record. I don't know if there's an easy way of doing this. So we have our weather with a date, a temperature, and a summary. Ideally, to be honest, I would like to fix the. I know it doesn't matter, does it? Because I'm only doing it between things. So if I do this, that should work. Generally, I like to do different casing when I'm working with JSON, but for this, I'm just going to keep it the same everywhere. So we now have our weather file that we can share between our shared app and our client app. Next one that we're going to do is add another new project. This is a lot of projects for not much. And we're going to add an Azure function to the mist. Who doesn't like Azure functions? And this is going to be Blazor test dot weather API. Ignore naming here. I am following no naming conventions at all. Let's have a HTTP trigger. Okay, get post. Let's change that one to name of weather. Let's just make sure I've not broken that one, shall we? So let's. Yeah, what the hell? Yes, allow. Can you tell it's a new machine? And then if we bring up a new Chrome tab here, you should get, okay, welcome to Azure Functions. Awesome. So what we want to do here is just create some fake weather. So let's add a dependency on models. Okay. Um, let's just do this one to get so it's easier, shall we? And then we want helps if you put new on there, doesn't it? For well, that was really nice of you to do, Copilot, but it'd be nice if you actually produce code that works sometimes. So let's generate this summaries. And why are you complaining? Right, okay. So return. Thank you, you'll do. That one is going to die on us, isn't it? That's going to... It's not going to die on us because, okay, Copilot was at least good enough to get the summaries length. Now, why don't you like this? Does not contain a structure that takes 3 arguments. Oh, you idiot. Yes, that makes sense. Because we're doing the wrong weather, because naming is so hard. Weather. So let's turn that into a weather forecast. And then let's come here. And this one should be multiple. Helps if you can type, which I absolutely can't. Let's see what that one does, shall we? A very quick API just to return a list of weather forecasts. Nice. So number 1, let's change our test client here. By the way, this is a terrible idea. Don't do this. This is just purely playing code. Nope, we don't want that. We want to start our client. And as well as the client, we want to debug our weather API. So where's debug? Start new instance. So in theory, we should be able to now see that if we go to weather, we get an error because of course we do. Why do we get an error? Because I've done something stupid. Oh, of course, cause. Damn it, I hate cause. How do we enable cause again? It's been so long since I've done that, I've kind of forgotten. Enable cause. Blazor WASM. So is it builder dot services dot add cause? No, means I'm looking at the wrong thing. So let's have a look here. Oh, that's interesting. Why should we need to turn it into a program main style program in order to do that? I'm going to cheat in a minute. In fact, I might cheat now just because I don't want to look into this right now. My head's not quite in that space. So what I'm going to do instead, just because I love cheating, is let's bring this one back up again, because I'm going to need some URLs in a second. The reason why I never play with cores is because I spend a lot of time working with static web apps, which it would seem is something that I installed on this machine. So yay. So what I'm going to do instead is static web app start, and I need to start this on 5123 because that is the host for my HTTP. And then we need a API port, and my API port flag needs to be 7269. And hopefully, if I've remembered the right settings, which I've obviously not because nothing's working. Let's close that screen. That one's still running. $52.13. 51.23. I put the wrong thing in. So if we do that, and if we spin up the weather API again, because I think I stopped it, Debug, start new instance. We have an API. So what I'm now actually doing is running this as though I've deployed it to a static web app, which to be fair is probably how I would deploy this. Which means that I'm about to break it again. Damn it. Because we killed our program, didn't we? 2 seconds. Let's get this working properly. This is why you shouldn't do stuff on the fly. We actually now do want that to come back to that. Okay, we have everything running. Counter. And there we get our weather. Yes. Although that's interesting because I'm not even running through. Because I haven't changed the page yet. I rushed into this too quickly, didn't I? The reason why that now works is because we're still going to sample this. And what we should be doing is going to API/weather. Let's see. Last time, does this work? So I should really have done this as multiple startup things. Never mind. So counter still works. Weather should fail. And it should fail because it can't find the API we're looking for. But if I go back to my other browser, which apparently I closed, so let's open a new window. And I go to localhost 4280. That should close our app. That should still work, and that still doesn't work. Why aren't you working? API weather is working, so obviously I've done something. I'm going to the wrong place, obviously. What error are we getting? Oh, right, of course, yes. So, you know what, let's set this up to start properly so I don't have to keep on playing about with it since it was stopping and starting. Let's configure our startup projects. We want multiple, and we want test client to start, and we want weather API to start. Okay. So in our client, we need to add the shared reference to the models. And then in our weather page, this isn't going to this weather forecast. This is going to at using Blazor test dot models and weather forecast. I don't know why my IntelliSense isn't working for this page. So now we can go back to that local host again, localhost 4280. Load our app, go to weather, and we have our weather again. Awesome, which is now coming from our API. That's what we wanted to see. Sorry, that took a little bit longer than I was hoping for. So we can see here we've hit our Azure function. We now have that data outside of that sample data. So this can now go, which is nice. Let's get rid of the sample data. Next one that we want to do is move this weather into the pages here. This is then going to need a dependency on the models. Okay, oddly enough, this doesn't need the dependency on the models anymore, so we can get rid of this one. Get rid of that page. And there we go. We've now got rid of all of our pages out of our application, which is what we were aiming for at the start. Does that build? It's probably not. It's probably going to complain that it can't find HTTP client and that kind of thing. Yep, that makes sense. So what we're going to have to do is, let's have a look. Let's just copy all of those to our shared and see which ones we're missing. Any or none? Build succeeded, even though we still have an error on our error list for some reason. Did it really succeed, or is it going to die on us again? It's going to work. We have our data. Title is wrong because I took out that Fahrenheit. But, you know, we get the point. We actually have a weather component working in the right place. Now, interestingly enough here, for our MAUI application now, this weather page works in a slightly different way. It actually has everything directly in here and just as a task delay because it assumes everything to come locally. So this page we're just going to get rid of. We're going to add the new page and we're going to see what we're missing. So let's see how we can add this. Our weather page, we need a HTTP client. Is that everything? Is that all we need? Just a HTTP client to get this to work? I think it is. Let's just add it here. Okay, obviously that builder.host environment's now gone because we don't have a host environment. So here I'm just going to go http://localhost. I think I'm actually going to go directly to the function for this one. So 7269. Is this going to work? We'll find out. So let's get rid of the weather page out of here. Which again, this now gets rid of all of the pages from our MAUI application. Let's add some more startup projects. We want a new profile. And this one we want to be web application. And this one we want to be MAUI application. And here we want the MAUI to start, and we want weather to start. Okay. But which one's active? I was kind of hoping I was going to get to see these in the drop-down boxes. Configure startup projects. Let's just assume that that one's active. Start that, see what it does. It's taking an aid, so I'm assuming that that's starting for the MAUI project. The CPUs are working 10 to the dozen, so again, I'm assuming that one's correct. There goes our weather API. Here is our MAUI application running in Windows. Perfect. Let's get that down to a decent size to bring it across. Sorry, just trying to get this working on the other screen because dual screens can be interesting. So we have our counter page. And we have our weather working inside of our MAUI application. Yes! I'm so pleased that that'll work today. That was exactly what I was trying to do. Right, so I want to do just a little quick recap here because there was a lot of thinking on the fly of what I've done. I'm going to have to put this one into some kind of GitHub repo. I'm going to rename it. I'm going to clean it up a little bit, put it into a repo so that we can continue building this. What we've done is we now have a few projects that allow us to run a Blazor WebAssembly application, a Blazor MAUI application with a shared set of pages so that as we expand the pages, both the app and the website get built upon at the same time. As yet, it's all been really simple. We've not actually had to do anything which is specific to MAUI. We're going to get there. But right now, we're just adding standard things. So I want to do one last thing before I call it a day today. And that is in my shared folder, I want to add a new Razor component. And I want to just do this. I don't know. I'm just going to call it contact because I've not really got anything in mind for this. We're going to run this at contact. And you can find me at ahref equals stacyclouds.net here. So we're just going to add a new page in there. And in order to add the new page, now this is one thing that we've not moved yet, which we should also probably move. And that is in our layouts, we have this nav menu. And we're going to have to do this one twice. This is the only duplication of work, and this should also be changed so that we don't have to. Contact. And we're going to call this contact. And then in this one, we also have a layout. We also have another menu. We will be copying this, don't worry. But just not quite yet. We have a div there. And if I start now, start the MAUI application first, shall we? There goes our API. There goes my application on the wrong screen. And contact, you can find me here. And if I click on that, I get a new window that opens with my website. Yay, go me. So that's a new page added there. Let's stop all of this. Change our startup projects to be the web application. Start that. Come to, you know what? I'm not doing anything with the API, so I can just show this one directly. We have a contact page here. Superb. We now have an application that we can quickly add pages to, and it does it both to our MAUI app and to our Blazor web application. First step to what I want to do with this. Next step, I want to change that about button here, which will take you to Microsoft, and I want to change that to a login. So I want to look at how to add authentication for a static web app and for the MAUI application. Not going to be doing that today because an hour is about the most that my long COVID and chronic fatigue will let me stream right now. But yeah, in either 1 or 2 weeks' time, we're going to come back. We're going to add authentication to this using auth.0 so that we can log into the applications and do things based on what authorizations our authenticated users have. You know what? I'm quite happy. I was expecting that to go way worse than it actually did. So that was quite good fun and quite cool. I hope that you enjoyed it too. I hope it's useful information for you. And yeah, let's meet again in a week or two and see whether or not we can get some authentication in here. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.